And Gandhiji reminds us that the beauty of Satyagraha is that it is available to either side to fight, that it has checks that automatically work for the vindication of truth and justice for that side, whichever it may be, that has truth and justice in prepondering measure. Here is Gandhi probably making truth and justice synonymous. And interestingly, making justice both the means and the end, just as truth also the means and the end for him. I remember this very compelling scene, and I'm sure many of you do, in Richard Attenborough's 1982 award-winning film, Gandhi. The relentless Lathi attack by the colonial British-led Indian policemen on Indian volunteers who tried to enter the Dharasana salt works. The Indians neither retaliate nor give up when these lathis crack their bones. Witnessing this, Vincent Walker of New York Times reported in 1930. And this is what he reported. They walked with heads up, without any hope of escape from injury or death. It went on and on and on. Whatever moral ascendancy the West once had was lost here today. India is free, for she has taken all that steel and cruelty has given, and she has neither cringed nor retreated. So this is what he reported. As you can see, the world saw India fighting colonialism as a fight where Indian values came into play and where India held the moral ascendancy. It was seen as a fight for justice with our age-old values and morality as weapons in this fight. In many ways, Gandhi saw this as an extension of the individual to the collective. You may also remember another scene where Gandhiji wanted to call off an agitation which was being launched for our independence. And here was Sardar Patel and Pandit Nehru saying that, trying to persuade him not to stop it. And they tell Gandhi that, Gandhiji, the country is moving. So Gandhiji asks, but in what direction? So for him, the direction was as important as what the end was, which is independence of India. But when we look and start looking at the broader canvas of international relations, the logic of what I just mentioned now, changes somewhat. Because international relations, my dear friends, are a function of power. Countries interact on the basis of power they wield, either individually or collectively. Justice and peace are determined by this important function and equation. And this power equation is not static. It changes with time. A country which is powerful today is not so tomorrow, and vice versa. That disturbs the balance, and a whole new equation of power balance comes in. And one searches for peace in this new equilibrium between power and time. Let us take the most recent example, which we are all witnessing, and we are seeing unfold before our own eyes: the Israel-Hamas war and the Palestinian issue. When we talk about rendering justice in the Israel-Palestine issue, should we talk about correcting the injustice of yesterday? By which I mean the injustice inflicted on Palestinians in Gaza, where more than 37,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel, of which more than 16,000 are innocent children. Where starvation, blockade of aid and medicine, and collective punishment are being used as weapons by the Israeli government. And the Palestinians in the West Bank are also not being spared and are being uprooted from their homes, and livelihood are being destroyed. Or should we talk about correcting the injustice inflicted on Israel on the 7th of October, when Hamas launched a brutal terrorist attack, killing nearly 1,200 Israelis and taking numerous hostages, more than 100 of whom are still in Hamas custody. This was the spark which ignited the Israel-Hamas war. Or should we talk about correcting the injustice done to the Palestinians in 1967 when Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip? And in these occupied territories live millions of Palestinians as second-class citizens without rights in their own land. So do people under occupation get the right to fight their occupier by any means available? Or should we talk about correcting the injustice done to Israel in 1947 when the Arab countries attacked them when Israel declared independence? Doesn't Israel have the right to live in peace and security? Or should we go back more than 2,000 years ago when the second temple was destroyed in Jerusalem? So what is the justice that you are really seeking? What is it that you are correcting? What is it that you can correct when, if corrected, can bring you peace? And who are those who are paying the price right now? As the Honorable Governor of Kerala mentioned 2 days ago in our conference, with a wonderful parable from the Mahabharata, this quest for justice may yield nothing but a cycle of violence and counter-violence which is never-ending. This cycle continues unless someone decides to break this cycle. And as he also reminded us, this breaking of the cycle of violence can be done only by using one's wisdom and compassion to bring peace, not necessarily by ensuring that justice is done. One needs leaders with wisdom and compassion on both sides to get out of the cycle, and this is precisely what is lacking in many unsolved conflicts of today. The UN Security Council agenda is full of unresolved conflicts going back decades, merely because human beings cannot find that wisdom to resolve them. There are enough people in this world who indulge in horrible acts under the guise of seeking justice. There aren't enough people who are willing to pursue peace by finding mutually acceptable solutions. As you can see in the Israel-Palestine context, justice itself becomes a function of time. It keeps changing and it is not a static concept. But whether you achieve justice or not, solutions have to be found for the present and in the present so that there is peace in the future. Friends, many people point out to the end of the First World War and how a humiliating settlement and agreement imposed on those defeated sowed the seeds for the Second World War. And thereby they surmise that unless a fair settlement is done, which we can loosely translate as justice is done, there can never be true peace. That's probably true. But there are as many examples of peace being established without justice ever being done or the status quo ever being restored. There are numerous countries which have faced the brutality of colonization or faced partition or even stripped of their assets or faced the brunt of a skewed world order. But they are looking beyond it to move ahead to find peace and prosperity. They are brave enough not to remain prisoners of the past. It's therefore not justice that they demand. It's the rightful place as peaceful nation states where they can provide adequately for their citizens. So what you're therefore searching for is not justice for peace. What you're searching for is a path to peace. The question we should ask ourselves is whether we want to correct the past or correct the future, or correct both if it's possible. Friends, to somewhat level the playing field for nation states, and I'm talking about international relations, where you cut down the possibilities for injustice, we need to circumscribe the use of arbitrary power and also counter the adverse effects of the passage of time. As I mentioned, it is a function of power and time in international relations. This is why the international community have adopted universally acceptable and applicable international laws, rules and regulations and customary practices in order to lay down international norms of behavior, and more importantly, accountability in the conduct of countries. But following these laws, you cut down the possibility of injustice and enhance the possibility of peace. That's why the Charter of the United Nations is important, which embodies the principle of prohibition of the use of force, non-intervention, sovereign equality, of equal rights and the right of self-determination of peoples, followed by the requirement of peaceful settlement of dispute. As a well-known scholar and practitioner, Professor P.S. Rao says, and I quote, "These principles are the natural outcome of the lessons learned by the peoples of the United Nations from the two world wars. The failure of the League of Nations to transform itself into a legal community of mankind, and in particular from 2 or more centuries of colonialism and evil association with domination, hegemony, discrimination, and exploitation." For more than 125 small countries in the United Nations, and we have 193 countries in the UN, and actually it is more than 140 countries actually, for 40 small states, the UN offers the only beacon of hope to express their aspirations and hope vis-a-vis economically and militarily powerful countries. And that's why I'm convinced that if we need to reduce this power play in international relations and create a more just and a value-based order, we need universally representative bodies and organizations, and not smaller groups as we are seeing now, even if they are well-meaning groups, like for example the G20 or the G7 or the Quad. But all of them essentially serve the interests of the smaller group they represent. We need to serve the interest of the majority of the countries in the world which are basically small states. The United Nations and the host of other international organizations have laid down international law, norms of conduct, and they're forging universal agreements for a range of issues: development, trade and investment, human rights, counterterrorism, environment, combating climate change, genocide, poverty eradication, good governance, etc. So when we attempt to bring peace in international relations, we are looking at this whole web of international laws and rules and regulations, which we come to loosely call as the rules-based international order. However, it is quite another thing that at the time when the West is preaching the virtues of freedom, democracy, accountability, human rights, and the rules-based international order, we see only their continued support for occupation, discrimination, impunity, and the violation of international humanitarian and human rights laws. And this we are also seeing, as I mentioned in an earlier example, in the context of West Asia. Even the rulings of the International Court of Justice to prevent possible genocide and immediately allow aid into Gaza are being disregarded. And the US lawmakers have threatened the International Criminal Court with retaliation if they dare touch Israel. So we create institutions to safeguard peace, and we actively seek to undermine them. And that is exactly what's happening now. Friends, on another issue, while we are looking at relations between nation states and countries and the fallout of these conflicts on peace? What if the conflicts goes beyond the capacity of one or two countries and they are global in nature? To tackle global challenges, we need global solutions for peace, new thinking, new paradigm, and we need to invent the whole concept of peace. The world today is far more globalized than at any time in history. Many of the challenges we need, for all these global challenges, we need global solutions, not just regional or national solutions. Climate change and environment, energy, sustainable development, technology, especially cyber, and of course pandemics like COVID-19, which we have all gone through. These are all bigger than what a single nation state can deal with. For example, in climate change, majority of the countries are those which never contributed to climate change, but they are the same countries which are facing the maximum adverse impact. While we know which countries are to blame, will they truly be held accountable? In fact, the issue of climate justice has become an important component of the climate change discussions. And the developed countries are making every effort to see that climate justice never becomes a reality. And with the march of technology, especially artificial intelligence, we now do not even know who our enemy is. For all you know, we may be our own enemy. Our dependence on artificial intelligence has not only increased, it is actually increasing exponentially by the day. Latest news reports say that Israel is using artificial intelligence, it's called the Gospel and Lavender, in Gaza to direct their bombings. How do you like your child to be killed by an algorithm? Now, these artificial intelligence and other technologies are available to even non-state actors. By non-state actors, we mean terrorists and others. And this makes the situation truly dangerous. But then, at least so far, we have human beings behind these machines, so to say, behind these technologies and behind artificial intelligence. But the most dangerous of all will be when artificial intelligence starts directing its own conflicts. And contrary to what you may be thinking, it may not be too far in the future. And at that time, I think the existing notions of justice will disappear from our lexicon. And when this happens, when machine fights you on its own, there will be no dharma. There will be no dharma left, but only karma. Friends, never has the need to collaborate with each other been more important, and never has been the world so divided. These contemporary challenges cannot be met with existing notions of justice and peace. We need collaboration for the collective good of humanity. These global challenges may go beyond what our inherited wisdom had envisaged, whether Arthashastra or the best of our other texts. But if so, we should be prepared to think differently. Maybe what we need is a synthesis of our past and our present for the sake of our future. So I thank Swamiji and the Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation for giving me this very valuable opportunity to speak to you, and thank you for being extraordinarily patient in hearing me out. Thank you.